All right. All right. We're back for another Friday Financial Wrap-Up with Mr. Michael Zuber. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for doing this. I always enjoy our conversations.
I do too. And this is pre-recorded. We're both traveling this week. This is for June the 20th, 2025. What I wanted to do is I think do something different and special is do a Friday financial forecast. What do you right? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Let's talk about this. This has been a crazy market. How do we see this market playing out, right? So it's basically, we'll call it the middle of June, the end of June, toward the end of June. How do you see this market playing out between now and the end of the year? And let me ask specifically, you got a lot going on, right? So the tariffs, the Trump economy, all of the different kind of uncertainty. How do you think that's going to play out as we go into July, into the fall, into the end of the year?
Man, we've got to, we have to be very nuanced here because I have thoughts on all of it and I don't want it to get confusing. So let's talk economy first.
Yep.
So, and I think the best measure of the economy that the average person will look at is GDP, right? Are we growing or shrinking? I suspect that by the time we get to Q3 and certainly by the time we get to Q4, that the Trump administration has pivoted from chaos to growth, right? I talked about very early on that the first 6 months of this administration were going to be chaotic, and congratulations, we're here. I think the next 6 months is about collecting victories. It's about tariff deals. It's about tax cuts. It's about deregulation. It's about companies building brand new manufacturing plants. So I believe the next 6 months, call it July 20th to January 20th, which will be the second 6 months of this administration, will be about collecting wins, celebrating wins. So again, if you step back and you believe that for a minute, what happens? Well, again, if you look at the first 6 months, we've gone into a very dark place. Consumers were uncertain. It was quoted in the Fed meeting minutes 177 times. It was just like the word of the year, uncertainty. I think what happens in the second half is we transition to winning. Now, what is winning? It's a better feeling, right? When you win a race, when you get a victory, when you do these things. So what likely happens is consumers feel much better.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's probably the first thing is the economy is on a growth trajectory as we exit 2025, which is collectively going to go down as a hard year, but we are set up for, as I've said all year, 26 will be better than 25 because I think the administration will be about the good mojo, the wins. Let's win the midterms. We can't lose. And I think you'll see a drastic behavior change. Maybe that's a hope, but it just feels that's my call. Is the second half is about posting wins. Is if I had to summarize something.
I like it. Winning, we like. It makes sense. I want to throw some comparison out there. I've been watched a couple of documentaries this last week, and about like the 1980s, Reaganomics, deregulation, the way the economy kind of Reagan jump started, with deregulation, and the U.S. economy really just took off and boomed. How do you see the big, beautiful bill, the bill that, how does that play out between now and the remainder of the year? Does that factor into this winning and or even deregulation? Any nuanced pieces about that, how that might play out?
Yeah, so I want to be nuanced again because I have thoughts that are going to feel like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth, and I don't want to do that. So the first off, as the big, beautiful bill sits today, my hope is it doesn't pass.
Okay.
I think most experts would agree that it adds to the national debt, and that's not what we signed up for. That said, I think the people in the Senate agree. So there is going to be some give and take. So the current big, beautiful bill doesn't pass, but the other side of my mouth, they will be declaring victory because something will pass. And it will still be called the big, beautiful bill. It will just be less of what's in there now, in my opinion. So again, it will be declared a victory. It will be declared this, that, the other. It will include deregulation. It will include tax cuts. And it will just be another sign of winning. Now,
Okay.
you can step back and go, is it really winning? It doesn't matter. It's going to be talked about as winning.
Right.
And the average consumer is not interested in the details. They don't care how the sausage is made. Just give me the food, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think the average person is not going to realize that, oh, by the way, the big, beautiful bill is 80% of what we wanted. No, it's going to be called a win. It's going to be say, hey, we negotiated, we got what we wanted. And most people are going to move on with their day because they're not really interested in politics. So I guess that's what I think about that bill.
Now, one of the things I want to follow-up question, something you said maybe 2-3 weeks ago, very, very subtle in our Friday financial wrap-up. You talked about that this pivot of the Scott Bassett, where a pivot where they were like, basically, we'll grow out of this debt issue. Like part of the thing was like, okay, let's push really hard to get the rates down. Let's get the Fed to cut. And then that wasn't working. So now it was like, almost like you kind of described it as a pivot that let's grow out of this. How do you see that playing out, or kind of what's your thoughts from strategy? How does that all play out this year or even going forward into 26?
Yeah, even since that conversation, the legend Paul Tudor Jones has come out and basically said the only way we can get past this national crisis, which is our national debt, is via growth. I talked about it, I think, on Wednesday, Paul Tudor Jones discussion, but from memory, Paul Tudor Jones basically said is we need a dovish Fed, which Powell is not. We need a dovish Fed, and we need rates down to the tune of 200 or so basis points, and we need to stoke this economy and grow out of it. So I think more and more people are realizing that we're not going to get the true $2 trillion savings from Doge. $2 trillion is not coming. Lower rates will certainly help with debt payments. But at this point, it seems like our only hope is growth and put the pedal down. So I mean, Paul Tudor Jones is arguably the top 5 investors in the world. And if he's telling us that now, it's like, all right, here we go.
Very interesting. And is that also why Elon kind of blew up on Trump and kind of like, it kind of almost like they pivoted the plan. Doge didn't really do, it didn't really happen, or like what is that part of it or no?
I'm sure it's part of it. I mean, if you believe what's been reported, Scott Bessent basically accused Elon Musk of being a fraud and a failure for not delivering $1 trillion in savings. I think the last I saw it was like 300 billion or something. So as far as Bessent is concerned, complete miss and failure. I don't think it's that. I think the bigger issue is, I think from what I heard is Elon wanted a particular individual at NASA or above NASA or whatever that is. And, the administration didn't take his input. And again, from where he sits, he's like, hey, I'm the guy going to Mars. I'm the guy reusing rockets. I think my opinion should matter. And the administration didn't listen. I think he saw that as a massive slight. And, as the richest man on the planet, you probably have a huge ego, and his ego didn't allow him to accept it. And he went on a little temper tantrum. And obviously Trump, we all know, is not afraid of throwing crap the other way. And, we saw 2 teenagers melting down on social media. And, it seems to be in a better place today. I don't think they'll ever be truly friends again, but they don't have to be, right? They just, but yeah, it's just, it's wild to watch adult men melt down.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to make sense of it all, and I'm sure if I have this question, I'm sure a lot of the viewers have the similar questions. So let's fast forward then. So what happens again? Forecasting. We're looking at between the fall, the end of the year, going into 2026. How do you see it playing out with Jerome Powell, a shadow Fed? Do we start to see the rate cuts? What happens at the Fed level, and then how does that trickle into the 10-year?
This is a very important question because this could go so badly. So let's decide. Let me articulate the worst case scenario. So sometime in July, or sometime between now and the end of July, Trump says, "This is my guy. This is the next Fed president." Okay. That person's just nominated. They don't have to go through any Senate hearing or anything just yet because, you got time. So if that happens, which I think it will, I think there's a better than 80% chance that happens by the end of July, possibly by the end of June, but I want to say end of July. We're then going to get some individual that's invited on every financial network, second guessing every economic metric, every Fed decision, every Fed minute, everything. And that is going to become at a minimum uncomfortable for the Fed and probably really uncomfortable for Jerome Powell. Nobody likes to be second, Monday morning quarterback. As I sit here today, my gut says Powell is strong enough to withstand this chaos and will finish his term. That is also my hope. However, he is already rich. He has already served his country. He could give the middle finger to Trump, to the next nominee, and frankly to the economy, and say, F you, you don't want me, I'm out. And that would not be good. The bond market would react violently to that decision. Take out somebody who is, independent, somebody who's not bending the knee, insert someone who is perceived at a minimum to bend the knee and be a puppet. 10-year note goes higher. So there's really two paths that I've highlighted there. Path one, 85%. Path two, 15%. Okay. So not zero, not likely, but possible.
And if that were to happen, if Powell were to get squeezed out and or resign, bond vigilantes, the 10-year goes to 6, the 30-year mortgage goes to 8 or 9, 8.5, 9, something. How violent would that be?
That's a very good question. I haven't thought about that. So off the top of my head, the 10-year goes to 5.5 at least. So a full point. And the 30-year, could see 7.5. It'll be violent.
Okay. All right. And again, 15%.
Yeah. So maybe. Not zero.
There were a lot of headlines about Bassett becoming the Fed. How would that work would he go from Treasury to, has that happened? Nah. Is that a normal path? Is that an upgrade or?
Well, I think Janet Yellen went from Fed president to Treasury, but you can't do both jobs. I think there was talk about Bassett being both. I mean, that's not going to happen. Okay. And just to be clear, Besson has come out in the last 24 hours and said, "I love my job. I'm not leaving." So that rumor should die.
I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. Like from Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. I'm going to keep my day job. So let's keep going. So let's talk about inventory, right? The big inventory. Inventory's been growing. This is the beauty of it, and I love it. For anybody who's really been with you in the community, especially the school community, people who are really like in it to win it with one rental at a time, the folks that are doing the work, they know you were calling for this months and months. You said the inventory is going to grow. Rates are going to stay higher for longer. In fact, I would almost say in my world, you've never been wrong. You've just been early. Yeah. In my world. You've always been early.
I appreciate that. I think my thoughts about inventory are going to surprise people because it's, again, counterintuitive and different than all the knuckleheads out there. I think inventory is going to roll over. And I'll even put some time on this. I'm going to call it August, September, October. And it's going to roll over. Actually, let's call it September, October. And it's going to roll over for two surprising reasons. Reason number one is I believe active inventory today is overreported. I believe if you were honest with yourself and you looked at your market and your buy box, you have plenty of wish pricing.
Yep.
You have sellers that believe it's 2022, and you have buyers who think it's 2015, right? There's just no meeting of the minds. And what will happen with sellers is they will just let the listings cancel or expire, or they will cancel them.
Yep.
So we're going to get a lot of wish pricing disappear. Second, I actually suspect that rates will be down slightly. They'll probably be down at their low of 6.8, as we talked about earlier. And you're going to get a surprisingly strong fall. I think a lot of people historically, it's the spring selling season and then the party's over. I think 2025 is going to shock people because, again, remember what we said earlier. The second half is about winning.
Yeah.
The consumer will feel better. They will stop being scared, and that will take people off the sidelines. So we're going to have less wish pricing, inventory leaves, and we're going to have slightly more demand, which means properties come off.
Okay.
So I think people are going to be shocked when inventory rolls over hard in September and October.
Very interesting call. I love it. I am with you, man. I love it. Any other thoughts? Just something that the One Rental at a Time community should be mindful of or prepared for as we get into, the second half, the third and fourth quarter for this year to really maximize their opportunities.
I think July and August will be the depths and also the peak, depending on what side you're on of the buyer's market. July and August will be the worst for sellers, but the best for buyers.
Okay.
So I shared this on last week's call. I'm currently identified a property that I'll be writing an offer on in early July, assuming it's still there, listed at $399. I'm writing a $300,000 cash 10-day close on that property because, again, I don't have to buy. But if this person still has it listed 75 days or whatever it will be, I'm going to take my shot. And again, I don't expect them to say yes. I expect them to counter, or I expect them to tell me to F off. And then I'll follow up every 2 weeks until either A, they sell it to me, B, they sell it to someone else, or C, they take it off the market. The key to doing what I'm doing now and getting great deals is I got to find lots of these properties. So I talk about one that I found in the last 24 hours. I need to find 50 of these, 60 of these, and then I will get one of those with that. I mean, I'm talking about a 33% discount or a 25% discount. That's what I mean about deal of the decade, deal of lifetime. So investors, buyers, I think July and August will be the best time to get creative, the best time to beat up sellers. So that's what I'll be doing.
Strong, folks. You heard it from Michael. We're going to stay close to the fire, meaning we're going to stay close to you, Michael. Thank you for all that you do. Enjoy your travels. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, family.